In this video, I'm going to give you some quick tips that will be helpful for you when it comes to using your metronome. Just real quick before we get into the tips, if you're watching this when this video goes live, then that means you have 1 day left to check out this awesome free training series I'm doing and get registered for my final live training that's actually going to be happening tomorrow on December 15th. So make sure that you go to quickstartclarinet.com/training to check out the awesome free training that I have up there and get registered for the live training that's happening tomorrow, December 15th, 2019. So I just want to get through some quick tips really fast to show you some things that you can do with the metronome. I've sort of grouped these tips into 3 different categories. The first one is when to use a metronome. The second one is sort of the how, like the functions. And then the last one is some games and some fun challenges that you can do with the metronome to really improve your practicing even more. So first off, when to use the metronome. It's a great idea to use the metronome whenever you're practicing fast music, or whenever you're practicing slow music, or whenever you're practicing, or whenever you have the instrument out, or whenever you're looking at your music, or whenever you're doing anything related to music. It's a good idea to be using the metronome. But seriously, the only time I would maybe not use a metronome is doing long tones where you're just focusing on the sound and don't have to be playing super rhythmically precise. But pretty much in every other single scenario of music you'll come across, rhythmic precision is of the utmost importance. So always, always, always use a metronome. The one other time maybe is if you're practicing performing, because of course when you perform, especially if you're doing like a solo recital or chamber music without a conductor, you won't have a metronome going. So maybe when you're practicing that performance, it's a good idea to do it without the metronome for a little bit, and then go back to your metronome and check that you maintain the good steady tempo and all of that. So always, always, always use the metronome. Now for some cool functions that your metronome can do that can be helpful when you're practicing with it like you always do. The first one is for time signatures. So oftentimes the default metronome setting will be sort of 4/4 where there's an emphasis on the downbeat. So it's like ding, dun, 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 ding, dun, dun, dun. There's that little extra emphasis on the first beat of every measure. I personally don't really like that because if you're playing music that changes time signatures, then that can be confusing. So what I do is I actually set my metronome to the time signature of 1/4. So it's just always ding, 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 ding. It's always the same sound going every single beat. And that helps me to just put it on and I can play in any time signature that way. Sometimes doing the time signature might be helpful if you want to make sure that you're lining up a tricky measure and really hitting the downbeat at the right time. But for most of the time, just 1/4 is simple enough and easy and can work for everything. There are some instances where the 1/4 won't work, and that's when you're doing things that are like 5/8, 7/8, or if it's switching between like 4/4 and 6/8, where that beat is changing. Whenever there's a compound beat or a beat with 3/8 notes, then the 1/4 will get turned around and become off beats if you just leave it going like that. So something you can do in that case is you can either turn off the accent and turn on 8th note subdivisions, so you end up getting ding, 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 instead of ding, 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 ding. And that will allow you to go between beats with 2/8 notes and beats with 3/8 notes because all of the 8th notes are being subdivided by the metronome. Another trick for doing that is you can just set it to double tempo. So you can leave it on 1/4, but if you're going 120 in a piece and you have some compound beats with 3/8 notes in it, set it to 240, and then that'll be giving you that 8th note subdivision. Some other instances where it may be helpful to double or half it is if you're doing something that's sort of a cut time feel. So say a piece is quarter note equals 120, but you actually want a larger melody and a larger phrase and you want to think of it in half note subdivisions, then you can set the metronome to 60, and instead of having something like beam, bum, bum, beam, bum, 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 it'll give you the half note, beam, bum, bum, beam, bum, bum, bum. And that might help you to phrase more musically and see bigger phrases rather than focusing and getting bogged down with every single beat. And the final function tip for your metronome, you likely have an option for different subdivisions of the beats. So you can have quarter notes, which is sort of the standard thing, eighth notes, which we talked about being useful when you have those compound meters, but it can also do triplets and sixteenths and even faster like quintuplets or sextuplets or septuplets. And that can be really helpful for just conceptualizing some of those more complicated rhythms. There are also some metronomes that do dotted eighths, sixteenths versus quarter note triplet, eighth note triplet. And that can kind of be cool to really make sure you're being precise and getting the difference between da 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 da, da 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 ta ta with dotted eighths, sixteenths versus the triplets da da ba ba, da da ba ba. That's a really tricky intricacy, and a lot of metronomes have that functionality built in, so you can really hear exactly what that subdivision is. Now on to our final section of metronome tips, and I call this the sort of games or challenge section. So the first thing that you can do to have some more fun with the metronome and have it sort of test you a little bit more than normal is to practice with the metronome actually on the off beats. So instead of doing it on the downbeats, dim, be, da, dim, bum, you can have it set to the off beats, dim, be, dum, bim, bum. And that adds an extra challenge where you really have to be subdividing and in control, and you're able to predict and know exactly where all of those offbeats are. Another one that's kind of similar to this is you can set the metronome again to half tempo, so that will give you only a click on every other beat, so that'll force you to be steady on the in-between beats where there's no click, and you can sort of test yourself to make sure that you're lining up with every other beat. You can also do this where it's just the down beats, so if you're in 4/4, you would divide the tempo by 4, so in quarter note equals 120, you can set the metronome to 30, and that'll give you just the downbeats. So maybe beam bum bum beedum bum 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 beedum beedum ba-dum. And that'll be a really, really good test to make sure that you're staying perfectly steady within each measure, because if you find yourself not quite lining up with those downbeat clicks, then that means you're either rushing or dragging within the individual measures. Now these last two games are to help you with speeding up the tempo or trying to reach a goal tempo and being really comfortable at it. So the first one, I call it like tempo ladder, where you start at a really comfortable speed, maybe half tempo or even slower, and then you play it until it's comfortable, and then you go up 2 clicks or maybe 4 clicks and play it until it's comfortable, and then you go back 1 or back 2 depending on how much you went up, and play it there until it's comfortable, and then you go up 2 or 4 again and play it till it's comfortable, then back 1 or 2. So you're always going up and then back and up and back and up and back. So you eventually develop a really, really strong comfort and control as you make it to your goal tempo. Another version of this that's a little bit different is called like tempo taffy, where you start in a sort of in between, so maybe like 75% of your goal tempo. You play it until it's comfortable, and then move up a little bit, play it till it's comfortable, and then you move back beyond the original tempo and go even slower, play that till it's comfortable, then go even faster till it's comfortable, slower, faster, slower, and you eventually stretch it out to where you're doing like half speed really comfortable and then up to full speed really comfortable. And that's just another great way of getting really, really comfortable and confident with some technical passages that you're practicing with your metronome. And that's it for all of my quick tips about using a metronome in your practicing. There was a ton of information crammed into this video, so if you want more elaboration on any of these different kinds of exercises or functions that you can do with the metronome, go ahead and comment it down below, and I'll either elaborate in the comments or I might even make a whole video about it explaining how it goes. And finally, if you're watching this at the beginning of December 2019, be sure to head over to quickstartclarinet.com/training. I'm going to have this awesome free training series that I've put together up for probably a week or 2, and then it's coming down, so make sure that you head over there so you can see that free training. And thanks so much for watching this video, and I will see you in another video.